this video, I am going to read to you in an English accent. It might come and go, because I don't have a real English accent, but I thought it was appropriate because I'm going to read from this book called My Wanderings and Memories by Lady Nora Bentinck. She, from my boyfriend's family. So, we have this book, and I haven't read it yet, so I thought, sorry about that. I don't like having them all the way in my ears so I can't hear, but they've got to be solid. Alright, so I'm going to read some of this book. I thought there was, oh, no wait, what? Don't think that's her signature, don't know what that is. But, you know, it was here, I haven't read it yet. I was thinking, what could I read to you? And it just seemed like it would work. So, first published in 1924. Sorry, I'm going to, okay. Oh, there's a picture of her. So, it's loose. Alright. So, let's read for a little while. Actually, I have to make some room on the camera, and then I will get started. One moment. Alright, I'm back now. I'm going to turn into an English lady, and I'm not sure how much I'll read, but we'll see when I get tired. Alright. Once upon a time. Okay. My Wanderings and Memories. Chapter 1. Origin of my family. Norman origin of the family of Noel, descendant from Robert Noel and his wife Celestia. Lands in Shropshire given to him by William the Conqueror. Lands gradually dispersed through being given as dowries to daughters. Noel's first came to Rutland in reign of Henry the Eighth. Sheriffs of Rutland in reigns of Henry the Eighth and Elizabeth. Sir Andrew Noel, Sheriff of Rutland, married Mabel, daughter of Sir James Harrington of Exton. Their son, Sir Edward, created a baronet in 1611. He married Juliana Hicks, daughter of Sir Baptist Hicks of Campton, Gloucestershire. I actually don't know how to pronounce that. Sir Baptist created Viscount Campton in 1628. I am so sorry about my pronunciation. I'm not English. He first bought the London property in Kensington, which still bears his name. Sir Edward created a baron in 1616 and inherited a viscountcy from his father-in-law, Sir Baptist Hicks. I should probably just look up the pronunciation of that word. Sir Edward's son was third viscount. I really need to look up how to pronounce that word. One moment. Viscount, I believe. Where was I? I don't know. Sir Edward's son. Edward's son was third Viscount Campton and was father of numerous children, including the first Duchess of Rutland, Countess of Berkeley, Countess of Northampton, Lady Allington, and Lady Bridget Noel. Some Belvoir letters, horrors of smallpox in 17th century. Okay. Robert, son of Noel, was Lord of Ellenhall, Wiverstone, Podmore, and Milnes in the county of Stafford in the reign of one of the most far-sighted and statesmanlike of English kings, Henry II. Only monarch of these isles ever to bear the style of Holy Roman Emperor. It was doubtless just because he was the Emperor that Nicholas Breakspear, only English Pope there has ever been, gave Ireland to him to subdue, all Ireland coming within the jurisdiction of the Holy Roman Empire. What a mercy he didn't elect to give it to a Habsburg or a Hohenstaufen. The king presumably did not look this gift horse in the mouth. The great-grandfather of the aforesaid Robert Noel had come to England with Conqueror, accompanied by his wife Celestia, of whom is known nothing more than her beautiful name. the last descendant of Robert and Celestia's eldest son, died at the beginning of the present century in the person of Charlie Noel of Bell Hall in Worcestershire, who left his estates to a son of the late Lord Cobham. For his services to the Norman master, he was given these woodlands in Staffordshire, which the Conqueror had taken from the Saxon owners, exactly as William III did 600 years later, when he gave his English lands to his Dutch friends Bentinck and Keppel. It is curious that my own family and the family of my husband are both, so to speak, grafted onto England from foreign sources, and I often tease him with the fact that the Bentincks can only claim just over 200 years of English nationality, whereas the Noels have been English for nigh on 1,000 years. The lands given by the Conqueror soon passed out of the family, though, as they were bestowed as dowries for daughters, one Alice Noel, 1189, marrying William Harcourt, took Ellenhall to her husband's family, in whose possession it remained for 18 generations. Beat that, America. From the third son of this branch, Andrew Noel, who died in 1562, are descended the present Earls of Gainsborough, who, failing in the male line in the middle of the 18th century, were recreated earls in the person of the son of Lady Jane Noel, eldest sister of the last Lord Gainsborough, and my great-great-great-grandmother. Her only son, Gerard, carried on the Noel family. He was one of the best-known unofficial characters of the latter half of the 18th century, and to his father, Gerard and Anne Edwards, is attached a peculiar quasi-romance, the elucidation of which has baffled all English genealogists. I shall refer to this story later. The aforesaid Andrew had a son also named Andrew, who represented Rutland in 3 of Queen Elizabeth's parliaments, and she dubbed him a knight at Greenwich in 1585. He lived and died at Brook in Rutland, and married Mabel, daughter and heiress of Sir James Harrington of Exton. A younger brother of this Andrew, Henry Noel, was known as one of the greatest gallants of those times, and is described thus in Fuller's Worthies. As for person, parentage, grace, gesture, valour, and many other excellent parts, among which skill in music, he ranks among the first at court. The Virgin Queen, although amusing herself at his expense, which must have been great, for Fuller describes him living in a state, pomp, and magnificence which did equalize the greatest barons of the land, is said to have composed this distich upon his name. The word of denial and letter of 50 is the name of this knight who will never be thrifty. Thriftless Henry Noel died in 1597 from overexertion due to playing a game called ballon with an Italian, a kind of play with a great ball tossed with wooden braces upon the arm. Oh dear. Such idiotic pranks remind one of 20th century ladies who, according to the daily press, die from exertions brought on from dancing for 24 hours without ceasing. Happens all the time. Henry Noel was buried in Westminster Abbey. I can't think why, except that it was the Queen's desire. In 1601, Alexander Noel was Dean of St. Paul's. Sir Andrew was succeeded by his son Edward, who was created a baronet by James I on June 29th, 1611, being the 34th in the order of creation. Stowe relates that when the king came to Burley, the seat of his favourite, Villiers, Duke of Buckingham, about 2 miles from Exton, he gave him the title of Lord Noel of Ridlington, March 23rd, 1616. Lord Noel married Juliana, daughter and co-heir of Sir Baptist Hicks, a rich silk merchant of London and of Campden in Gloucestershire, upon the wolds of which beautiful country he had countless herds of sheep. He was created a baronet in 1620, his baronetcy being the 137th in the order of creation in England, and in 1628 the Viscountcy of Camden was given him, which title descended to his eldest daughter's son, Lord Noel. He was a lover of beauty, a great philanthropist, and a public benefactor to his native place, Campden, which, by the wealth his brain and industry had amassed, he was able to make the beauty spot it now is, attracting countless visitors from all over the world. The almshouses and marketplace are among the most renowned architectural beauties of England, and are entered thus in his papers. Oh, we're not going to read that. It's a whole list of... Built a hospital for 6 men and 6 women in 1612 and settled £140 per annum on it forever, etc., etc. Of his birthplace, Mr. Guy Darber says, Campton is almost unique amongst the many interesting towns of the Cotswold, and within its small limits contains some beautiful examples of domestic architecture. It lies in the heart of the stone district, and this material is used to the exclusion almost of all others, and we find here the genuine Cotswold common-sense style of stone building brought almost to perfection. Apart from the picturesqueness of its long street, with a somewhat unusual arrangement of groups of isolated buildings, and the strong and sturdy character of its architecture, it is singular in possessing a group of buildings designed evidently by one hand and erected within a few years of each other. Though possessing all the charm and variety of the local work, they are stamped with a scholarly feeling and grasp of design and composition that impart an air of distinction apart from the other buildings in the town. Of old Camden House, built by Sir Baptist Hicks and set fire to by his wife, Mr. Darber remarks, this building was planned on a scale of lavish magnificence, even in those opulent days, and with its terraces, gardens, fish ponds, and extensive outbuildings covered a space of over 8 acres in extent. But little of the original remains, but the western pavilion of the terrace, the entrance gateway, and the so-called laundry have escaped the hand of the vandal and restorer, and show the fine character of the work and its particular characteristics. By the same hand are the almshouses, a simple group of buildings on a raised terrace overlooking one of the approaches to the great house, and in the main street the beautiful old market hall, dated 1627, still stands as a testimony to the generosity of Sir Baptist and the ingenuity of his architect. These few buildings are, without doubt, foreign in their origin and conception, in the sense that they were not indigenous to the district, as they stand quite apart from the traditional homely local growth, and show traces not only of a masterly hand, but also of the prevailing Italian feeling which was then so prevalent in the centres of learning and culture. The manor was held previously to the Norman conquest by King Harold, and at the time of the Domesday Book survey by Hugh, Earl of Chester. It continued in this family till 1232, when on the death of Earl Ranulph, without issue, it passed to his 4 sisters. In the reign of Henry VIII, one Thomas Smith held the manor, and Anthony Smith sold it to Baptist Hicks in 1609. One of the most interesting old buildings in town, also belonging to my father, was the beautiful house built about 1390 by William Greville. The superb and delicately wrought oriel window is a little gem. Greville died in 1401, and he and his wife are commemorated on a fine brass in Campton Church thus: Here lies William Greville of Campton, formerly a citizen of London, and the flower of the wool merchants of all England, who died 1st October A.D. 1401. Here lies Marion Greville, wife of the aforesaid William, who died on the 10th September A.D. 1386, on whose souls may God have pity. Amen. Davis says that the Earls of Warwick, not the same family as the kingmakers who were Nevilles, are descended from this William Greville. Baptist Hicks was surely the best type of the best product of the early 17th century, and in such veneration and admiration was his memory held by his family during the intervening years that the name Baptist became very common among my ancestors and relations. Modern ears, however, do not like it, and the only member of the family today to bear the name went to a vast amount of trouble to have it legally changed to John. This cousin was the intrepid cinema photographer with the Mount Everest expedition of 1922-1923. During the lifetime of Sir Baptist Hicks, he gave £10,000 to charities in his estates Kensington and Camden. He had 2 daughters. The eldest, Juliana, married Lord Noel of Brooke and Ridlington. They had 3 daughters: Elizabeth, who married Viscount Chaworth, around whose life and times is woven the novel A Tale of the Vale of Belvoir; Mary, who became the wife of Sir Erasmus de la Fontaine of Kirby Bellers in Lancashire. What a name for a novel! Whose daughter Juliana married one of the Tracys of Toddington near Camden, and whose initials J.T. can be seen today on the gate at Stanway. Lord Wemyss's lovely place in Gloucestershire, made modernly famous through the recent tenantry of our adorable literary wizard Sir James Barrie. Penelope, who died a maid. The son of Juliana, Noel, born Hicks, inherited the barony of Noel and the Viscounty of Camden from father and mother respectively. Before his marriage he was a great spendthrift, and is said to have lost in one day at tennis to Lords Carnarvon and Rich £2,500. Later, however, he redeemed the foolishness of his youth and became a zealous royalist. The parliamentarians rifled his estates and forced him to pay a fine of £21,000, which was, however, reduced to £9,000, a goodly sum in those days, much more than that of 1 billion marks imposed upon Herr Krupp von Bohlen by the French in the year of grace and equity 1923. Really. Lord Camden died at Oxford, a prisoner of the Cromwellians. The Hickses of Camden are the same root as the Hicks Beeches, recently created Earls of St. Aldwyn. Sir Baptist Hicks's second daughter married three times. Sir Charles Morrison of Cassiobury, Hertfordshire, Sir George Cooper of Wimborne in Dorset, and Sir Edward Alfred. Baptist, Lord Campden, son of Edward and Juliana, was brought up in his grandfather's business, and had great dealings with the court over his rich silks, fetched from Italy, by which he got very large fortune. This controverts the rather cynical utterances of the author of Collections and Recollections, who says that the contempt of the aristocratic for filthy lucre was only a contempt for the habit of acquiring it by trade. Before the war, one knew persons with pedigrees to the ark who, although unwilling to enter trade themselves, were, however, not above marrying the daughters of successful tradesmen. Today, though, dukes' sons rollick on the stock exchange and drudge at office stools, and sprigs of aristocracy tout for wine merchants, tobacconists, and motor firms. Eldest sons are their own agents, thus reducing the applicants for this softest of soft jobs, and carrying on furnishing stores, while their sisters act for films and write for the Sunday press. Their papas, too, are not above indulging in this lucrative pastime. After all, it's a better way of adding to a depleted or an insufficient income than giving their name as a director of a company which turns out to be fraudulent. Lord Camden, whose prowess in trade caused this little excursion into more recent realms of aristocratic industry, built himself the exquisite house just mentioned at Camden, which, however, his wife set fire to with her own hand during the civil wars to protect its falling into the hands of Cromwell, who had just been victorious at Edgehill. This spot could be seen from the window of old Camden House. The great Oliver, however, never even came there. A road to this day called King Com Lane runs at the back of Camden, and is reminiscent of those tragic times in England when the eclipse of the Stuarts began and the king came that way. In those days, Exton belonged to the Harrington family, and it was from the trustees of Lucy, Countess of Bedford, daughter of Lord Harrington, that Sir Baptist Hicks acquired this estate, which he left to his son-in-law, the aforesaid Lord Campden, whose maternal grandmother had been Mabel Harrington. When does she get on the story? There's some story there. Okay. Well, at the time of the conquest, Wulftheoge, Earl of Northumberland and Huntingdon, held land at Exington. From him and his wife, Countess Judith, a niece of William the Conqueror, Exton passed to their only daughter, Matilda, who married David, King of Scotland. From then it went again in the female line to the noble family of Bruce, through a Ruth's marriage with one Nicholas Green, it remained in the family for some time. Nicholas lies buried at Exton Church, and upon his beautiful tomb are written these words: "O you pass this way, pray for the soul of Nicholas Green." You know, I'm bored with this. I mean, let's get on with something else. Letters. I hope you are as just in burning my letters as I am in not showing your verses, but her sister did not burn them. Well, I don't know when. It gets a little interesting on the next page, I suppose. I'll have to stop in a moment, though. Well, let's see. From the Greens it descended to the Culpepers, a very old family at Exton. Thomas Culpepper married Juliana Cromwell, and their daughter Catherine married John Harrington, the then owner of Exton. In the 17th century, Mabel Harrington, only child and heiress of Sir John Harrington, married Lord Noel of Brook and Ridlington, places situated about 8 miles from Exton. Thus Exton came into the Noel family, in whose possession it still remains to this year of our Lord 1923. When Sir Henry Wotton was English ambassador in Venice, appointed in 1604, Lord Harrington, who was travelling through Europe with Prince Henry, eldest son of James I, visited him there. Of this episode the ambassador wrote to the Minister of Foreign Affairs in London that Lord Harrington was a man of great parts, and it was easy to see who would govern England if this prince came to the throne. It was Sir Henry Wotton who wrote in the album of a German acquaintance his celebrated definition of an ambassador. It's in Latin, which was rendered thus into English by his biographer, Isaac Walton. An ambassador is an honest man sent to lie abroad for the good of his country. The words remind one of the late Lord Salisbury's definition of a political candidate: one who is standing, hopes to be sitting, and knows he is lying. Lord Harrington was the guardian of the Princess Elizabeth of England, sister of Charles I and wife of the Palatine of the Rhine. She lived at Exton for some years before her marriage. When poor and deserted in England at the end of her tempestuous and tragic life, she gave a beautiful cabinet, which had been a wedding present to her from the States General of Bohemia, to a chamberlain, Sir Philibert Vernati, of whom more later, as this man's family is a subsequent connection with mine. The Noels lost much in the cause of the Stuarts, and after Lord Campton's death, his own house, Camden House in Kensington, was let to Anne, Princess of Denmark, who lived here with her little son William, Duke of Gloucester, who, had he lived, would have been King of England. It was to this house of the Noels that William III used to come in his leisure hours to play soldiers with his wife's pathetic little nephew. About this date the Bentincks made their first appearance in England. I must stop here because of my camera. We're going to get to the end of this section today, and then you let me know if you're interested in any more. Yes, they lost much in the cause of the Stuarts. Mercurius Politicus, the Daily Mail of the 17th century, records the following for the date June 7th to June 14th, 1660. On Friday, June 8th, His Majesty Charles II went to Hampton Court. He gave a meeting to the Parliament and was pleased to sup with Lord Camden at Kensington that night. This house was sold in 1719 to Nicholas Leckmer, and in Swift's ballad Duke upon Duke the following lines occur: "Back in the dark by Brompton Park, he turned up through the gore, so slunk to Camden House so high, all in his coach and four. The Duke in wrath called for his steeds and fiercely drove them on. Lord, Lord, how rattled then thy stones, O kingly Kensington." In 1820 the piers to the original gateway of the house was still standing, surmounted by 2 bulls of exquisite workmanship, supporters of the Noel arms, and were for long the admiration of every good judge of English sculpture. In 1666 the 3rd Viscount Campton was created an earl by Charles II, and he had 4 wives. From his progeny by these ladies, who were Lady Anne Fielding, Earl of Denbigh, who lived at Gunthorpe near Oakham, Anne Hester, Lady Elizabeth. It has been said that a very large portion of the peerage is descended 4 of his sons-in-law were the Earl of Northampton, Lord Allington, the Earl of Berkeley, and the Earl of Rutland, who was created Duke in 1703. This Lord Rutland was the 9th Earl and the great-grandson of Dorothy Vernon of Haddon Hall, whose secret elopement caused by religious differences, the Vernons being Catholic and the Manners Protestants, is a classic in the domestic history of English romance, as the father of poor Dorothy's lover enjoyed in a high degree the favour of Henry VIII, and obtained lands in that monarch's reign for his good services. The bitterness need not cause much surprise. But to return to Lord Campton. He lived at Exton during the whole of his married life, 1632 to 1682, while his younger brother, Henry Noel, lived at Luffenham Hall, about 4 miles away, and was besieged in his own house by Cromwell's troops. The daughters of Lord Campton's 4th wife, Lady Elizabeth Bertie, were Lady Rutland, Lady Penelope Dormer, and Lady Bridget. The last named is thus described for the late Reverend E.A. Irons, vicar of Luffenham and well-known archaeologist. The Lady Bridget Noel presents herself to us as a fashionable young lady of the Stuart period, very much interested in gaming, sporting, and betting, as well as in the other doings of the gay world of her time. She is a very bad speller in an age when little attention was paid to this accomplishment, yet this makes it easy to tell from the omission of certain letters, example of S coming before C, that she spoke with a graceful lisp. She was devoid of culture, though quick-witted to an extreme, and through all her letters there runs a vein of strong common sense, by no means lacking the serious element. Altogether we cannot help having a regard for this young lady, although a barrier of some 200 years makes more friendly acquaintance impossible. The arrangements for the journey to town began to take definite form on Sunday, December 13th, 1685, by which day her brother, Baptist Noel, who was MP for Rutland at the time, had already reached his destination, for my Lord Exeter came as far as Hatfield of Wednesday last to meet him. The ladies started the following week, proposing to go to Bugden the first night, and the next to Stevenage, and the next to Barnard, and so for London, and at night to Jenkins, a large house near Barking, 8 miles from London, belonging to Sir Thomas Fanshawe, the lord of the manor of Jenkins in Barking, where, she adds, I shall not store till after Christmas, and then but seldom. It's bad spelling. In a postscript we are told, my sister Pen has won you, i.e. the Countess of Rutland, a crown, and I played at dice and won you half a guinea and a crown at cribbage, so if you please I will play till all the money is gone, or more won, or if you will not venture any more, I will return the money. All which throws a light upon home amusements in North Luffingham in James II's time. In motoring to London from Exington in the 20th century, I passed through Buckton and Stevenage, just as did those other Knowles of 250 years ago, in lumbering coaches and with relays of horses. On the Tuesday week following, December 29th, 1685, the Lady Bridget writes, a Tuesday, my sister Pen and sister Noel and my brother Baptist and I go to town with an intent to what of sister Northampton, and my brother Gainsborough. We shall sup at Lady Exeter's, and after supper go to the music meeting in York Buildings, where there will be a great deal of company. Lord Northampton is gone down to what of Lady Conway, and the Bishop of London with him. Lady Dorset is in town, but she goes down before Christmas is done, and Lady Northampton and sister Gainsborough with her, and Lord Gainsborough goes to Titchfield. Bridget was renowned for her flirtations, her cockfighting, card-playing, and horse-racing, and seems to have been the cause of much concern on the part of her relations, as the collection of letters written to her sister, the first Duchess of Rutland, and kept in the Belvoir archives, testify. The following is an extract from a letter written by Lady Campton, born Bertie, to her daughter Catherine, born Noel, at Belvoir, Exton, February 27th, 1681. Albemarle House is sold for £33,000 and is to be put into a great square as Soho. They say my lord will be the first earl that is made, and that it will be about Easter term. My brother Charles, Lord Lindsay, whose name comes from the Lindsay and Wolseley districts in Lincolnshire, wishes Bridget well married, but he says men now look to be courted as women used to be formerly. The men in London do not think of marrying. In a book of memoirs of an ancestress of my husband's, the hereditary Duchess of Aldenburgh, almost the same words occur, and the letters are dated over 100 years previously, taking us back to the 16th century. So the ancient plaint goes on from one generation to another, each speaker of the time-honoured words imagining that such things never happened in their day. In 1685, Bridget writes to Belvoir from Jenkins, a country house near London. I am in a perpetual hurry, for we go to town 3 or 4 times a week, and come down so late that I'm forced to lie in bed all the next day. It is easy to go up and see a play and come down at night. I have been with Mrs. Lacroix, the great fortune-teller. One thing she told me was I should never have the smallpox. She died of this dreaded illness at Exton after nursing her 2 nephews. All 3 died on the same day. In another letter she gossips a bit thus. All the town will be at the masquerade at Montague House. The British Museum now occupies this site, and Lord Devonshire desires none to be there but people of quality. Lady Banbury's sister, Lady Frances, is marred Abel, the singing master, and her brother is extremely concerned at it. Lord Banbury put her out of the house. My sister Noel and I was at Burley yesterday. My Lady Gainsborough, her brother Bab's wife, who was the daughter of Sir Thomas Fanshawe of Jenkin and Cottesmore, met us at Burley in such a dress as I never saw without dispute. Her Engan manteau is the worst of the kind. I hope you are as just in burning my letters as I am in not showing your verses. But her sister did not burn them, and now, after 250 years, one can get a glimpse of the character, pleasure-loving, whimsical, and warm-hearted, of Bridget. Suitors there were, but she would have none of them, and the most persistent seems to have been Chaloner Shoot of the Vine, whom her mother discarded as not good enough. And so she died a maid, sporting, plucky, and kind to the end. Goodbye, brave Bridget Noel. You deserve a little praise for the same deed as has made William Bentinck's name famous in history. He took his king in his arms when suffering from smallpox, and you did not fear to nurse your brother's children when ill from the same dire disease, and so to risk all and give it without murmur. So that was chapter 1. Let me know if you're interested in reading further, or any other books you might want to read in English accent, perhaps. It's lovely. All right. I'm tired. It's time for dinner, I think. Talk to you later.